Hey guys, welcome to the American Tribune Live. We have an incredible story. It finally happened. Take off the tinfoil hats. You don't need to wear them anymore. They are just introducing climate lockdowns. I have been saying, lots of people saying, my audience was probably saying the same thing. COVID was a practice run. They wanted to see what they would get away with. And I don't even know if they were testing the water so much as they just enjoy locking you down, stealing your freedoms, imposing their tyrannical communist rule over you. But we always said, COVID, it was going to go away. They couldn't manufacture the virus forever. But with climate's always been what it's building up to. And this is the final stop here. This is why we have to push back against climate insanity, the lies of climate change, man-made climate change, so much because they will use that narrative to ruin your life forever. Again, this is not a conspiracy anymore. This is now happening in Canada. And I don't need anyone saying, like, this is just one province. It's just in Nova Scotia. This is the mindset. This is what they all yearn for. This is why we keep hearing about climate change constantly in the public discourse. And no, it has nothing to do with man-made climate change. If you really want to get into the weeds, you can look at precession of the planets and the stars and the universe and the galaxy. You can talk about the tilt of the Earth and how we get closer and farther from the sun. That's the real cause of climate change here, not you driving a gas-powered car. Not you flying commercial when the Hollywood celebs and the politicians say, stop going places, you're going to ruin the planet, as they hop on their private jet. They build their huge mansions. They've got residences in the United States, on Pacific Islands, all over the world. They can jet around to their massive places all day long. And they're not worried about, contributing to climate change. But you need to, in the words of Minnesota right here, I had to start with this screenshot. This is from my home state of Minnesota here. Because of the Canadian wildfires, which, gosh, it seems like they almost set those off on purpose every year, consider reducing your trips. If you live in Minnesota, you drive on any freeway, you see this sign here. There's an air quality alert. You better consider reducing your trips. Now, they're not worried about your personal health. If they are worried about your health, years ago, Minnesota would have banned using your SNAP accounts to buy soda and junk food, as we are seeing red states finally do. If they are worried about your health, they wouldn't impose socialist health care that will never treat you as well as the private sector. If they were worried about your health, they wouldn't have lied to you and covered up available treatments during the pandemic. So no, I'm not thinking for a second that they're actually worried about my health here. They just want to plant the seed in Minnesota when you drive down the road and see these signs everywhere. Consider reducing your trips. Do you see how bad it is outside? It's hazy, it's smoky, it's hot, it's cold, it's Minnesota. We have all the weather up here. You need to just stay home. Lock yourself down. We're encouraging you to lock yourself down right now. Don't worry. In Minnesota, eventually we will just lock you down. But consider reducing trips. That'll solve the problem. Boy, that will really solve the problem. Just don't go anywhere. Now, Tim Walz, when he promotes these signs here, do you think Tim Walz stopped traveling around the world, going to the junkets, going to the press conferences, flying around, doing whatever, rubbing elbows with all the donor classes? Do you think Tim Walz is consider reducing trips? Do you think Texas Democrats are considering reducing their trips right now as they flee Texas to Illinois and New York? Yeah, good job, everybody. No, this is insane here. If you live in Minnesota, you have seen this. And the woke, brainwashed, NBC-boosted, masked-up Dem sheep that live in the state are probably like, thank goodness for big government looking out for me. I know they have my best interests at heart. They're telling me to consider reducing my trips. You know what? I'll do my part. I'll do my part in this communist utopia. I'll stay home today. I won't go visit my family. I won't go coach my kid's softball game. I'm just a good Minnesota Democrat voter. So I'm going to consider reducing my trips here. I'm going to take that to heart. Meanwhile, no elite, no politician, no celebrity will ever consider reducing their trips. But planting the seed in Minnesota and just to the north, they're no longer asking you to reduce your trips. They are telling you you are no longer allowed to walk outside. That is the new law in Canada, in the province of Nova Scotia. They said it's too hot. Yes, the Canadian summers are too hot, so you can't go outside and walk in the woods anymore. They are banning fishing, camping, hiking, strolling, and it gets even more wild here. They actually ban this on private land. If you own, allegedly, I'm going to say this allegedly. I think I can say this on X and on Rumble, but we're streaming live on YouTube as well. So I don't know. I haven't fact-checked this claim, but it applies to private land as well. So if you know someone that owns 100 acres in the Canadian woods in Nova Scotia, and you want to go hunting or just go outside and touch grass, we will fine you $25,000. So wild show today, folks. The climate lockdowns are here. This, again, like I said at the beginning, this is no longer a conspiracy theory, but I welcome you to the show. I am Todd Peterson. We do the show every Tuesday and Thursday. I think I just moved my time unofficially to 9 a.m. I think the banner still says 9:30 a.m. We go live when we want to go live. And, we talk about what we want to talk about here. I had no idea what the show was going to be about today. And I saw this story and I was like, my God, we have got to get this information out there. I think it'll slowly go a little more viral today. I got a clip of this just disastrous PM. I think they call them PMs up there. I don't know. I don't care. I also don't want Canada to be the 51st state because they elect people like this. And if we bring Canada into the United States as the 51st, you're basically saying I want more of these lunatic voters to make decisions for my life in the U.S. And so I absolutely do not want that here. But we got a clip of him at a press conference as he defends this decision. I got a little follow-up here. I think this is part of the legislation that was written or the law that was written here. And then we got a local story covering the news. How do you think local Canadian media is going to cover that story? So we got that all lined up today. And then if we have time, I want to talk about Somalis in Minnesota because I love focusing on immigration. Want to talk about, we have a story from Fort Stewart. Remember the shooting that happened at Fort Stewart just yesterday? Amazing how that story disappeared. So we'll just kind of touch on that a little bit. It is exactly who you thought it would be, and I have opinions on that as well. But folks, welcome to the show. Again, we stream live every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 o'clock, 9:30 a.m. Central. And on Friday, I do a podcast. So that's going to be tomorrow now, Freedom from the Press with my business partner, Jason Robertson, on our main Rumble channel, on YouTube, on all of our Facebook properties, over on the Twitter here. I don't do my show on Facebook because if I talked about man-made climate change being a hoax, I'm going to probably get a little snippet or a fact check over on YouTube here. They might nuke us, and we don't want to get nuked over on Facebook. So we take the coward's way out. Also, why would we do that? Why would we own Facebook properties, invest in Facebook properties, have a big following on Facebook, and just throw it out to get nuked anyways? So I do not do the show on Facebook, but we will be live on Facebook tomorrow if you're following any number of our 17 pages there. This is a live show. Drop some comments here. If you live in Canada, let me know how you endure this. If you live in Minnesota, let me know if you've seen some of these signs here. But I think we got to dive right into it here. Again, headline says it all. Climate lockdowns begin in Canada. Let's listen to Nova Scotia's, I guess, Prime Minister. Maybe they have a different title up there. He is justifying, he's explaining, he is describing to you why this was so necessary to prevent you from going out into the forest. Let's take a listen.
Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods. We are restricting travel and activities that really aren't necessary for most of us. Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits. Camping is allowed, but only in official campgrounds. The fine for violating any of these bans is the same as the fine for the ban on burning, $25,000. And if you're a smoker, for God's sakes, be mindful of where you're butting your butt out. If you don't, and you cause a fire, we will hold you accountable. So what does this mean?
All right, I do have to say, I actually agree with that. I think we should be holding these people accountable in general. Also, it is 2025. Why are you smoking still? But if you're going to be an asshole and then just toss a lit cigarette on a dry tinderbox, which is the Canadian forest system, you should be held accountable. You started a massive forest fire. I got to say, I fully agree with that. I am a big fan of personal responsibility. That means as a smoker, you are responsible for not starting forest fires. There's a lot to be said about the Palisades fire. That seems like it was all intentional. I have my own theories that these Canadian wildfires, they happen every summer now. Where I live in Minnesota, air quality just tanks in July and August. I kind of think they do that on purpose anyways. You're telling me you can't control forest fires? Like, yes, I understand small sections of forest, but it's just like California. If you clear dead brush, if you cut down dead trees, if you just carve out even some sections in the forest so it's not all one giant thing, you can definitely prevent or limit them. Not saying all the fires. There have always been forest fires as long as there have been forests, so I'm not saying all of them would be eliminated. But the scope of these things, it is ridiculous. Just have some common sense mitigation techniques. But they don't want to do it because they love the ecology, they love wildlife, they love nature so much that they don't want to take down a dead tree because that might be some like random squirrel's home. And then it turns out that random squirrel gets torched anyways. The dead tree is torched anyways, and you allow the fire to spread even further here. So a little mitigation would go a long ways. California Democrats are entirely responsible for the wildfires that break out in that state. So I blame Canada's government as well. Just clear dead brush. Just make little sections in the forest. You can grid it out. So, okay, if a fire starts in the forest here, it'll go through this little block here. I don't even know about forest management. I am not trained in that. I'm not an expert in that. I'm a layperson. That seems like it would make sense. But again, common sense is asking too much for the government. So I do agree. I had to pause the video to be like, it's not all bad. If you're a smoker and you cause a forest fire, you should go to prison forever. I am fine with that. Don't toss a cigarette on the forest. Have a plan in place for when you are done smoking. But everything else here, did you notice in the beginning? And this guy's only halfway through. We're going to listen to the rest of him. Did you notice he said, we're going to do this because it doesn't really apply to most people? Yes, apparently in Canada, it is just now accepted that most people don't like to get outside. They don't want to go hiking in the woods. They don't want to go fishing. They don't want to be hunting. They don't want to be outdoorsmen. If you want to go camping, apparently you get one little spot to camp at here. I can't believe they're allowing camping even. But because of most people not liking getting outside, we're now going to say no more going outside. Remember in COVID when California was like, you can't go to the beach because you might spread the virus outside of the beach all alone. You can't go to the playgrounds, the parks, or the skateboard deals, and they filled all that with sand. Here we go again. And again, you could say it was a trial run, a test run. They're trying to figure out the brainwashing techniques, the media coverage, trying to figure out will people comply or not. I'm half on board with this was an actual test versus just they get off on tyrannizing you. So, yes, either way, however you slice it, California is going full climate lockdown. It turns out we want to be outside. Most normal people want to get outside. I don't want to be in a screen. I don't want to be in my office doing a podcast. I want to go outside. I want to go mow the lawn. I want to go swim in the lake. I want to go for a run. There's lots of things I want to do outside. If I lived in Canada, they would say, no, you can't do any of that, even on your private property. And Jason does say, welcome aboard, Jason. Some of us love a good cigar. I love a good cigar. I made my own humidor. I don't know if you guys have ever tried this here. I got a Tupperware box, and I got some Boveda packs, and I just made a humidor out of that. I got some cedar-lined wood for the cigars here, but I kept spending all this money on like fancy humidors. And I was like, why am I doing this? I can do the Tupperware style here. And it's been working out great. I love it. Airtight. Keeps all the humidity in there. And I do love a good cigar. I don't love a good cigar in a dry Canadian forest. And I'm not just going to toss my cigar on the ground, though. So I'm with you on that, Jason. Love a good cigar. They are not the same as cigarettes whatsoever. You're not inhaling. It is all natural. Cigarettes have toxic chemicals in them. But yes, I love a good cigar, but I'm not going to toss my cigar on dead leaves and start a forest fire either. But I'm with you on Jason. Jason, at some point, you and I need to go smoke a cigar together again. Go to a good poker tournament or something like that. So, Jason, welcome aboard. I think Jason and his wife are smokers, and they probably didn't like my comment about smoking in 2025. But that is neither here nor there. I still love Jason. Jason and I do a podcast tomorrow, by the way, Freedom from the Press, Friday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern. All right, we got to get into this. This guy is just getting rolling here. He is, do you know how much he's enjoying this, by the way, here? He's just presenting this like, look, folks, it's common sense. You shouldn't go out in the woods. There's going to be a fire. It's hot outside. I'm just looking out for you. Just the way he presents this information. And Jason does say cigarettes are poison. Yes, they are.
If you have a home or cottage surrounded by a wooded area, we strongly encourage you to stay out of those woods, regardless of where they are. Please don't do anything that could unnecessarily put you, your family, or your neighbors at risk.
Guys, you could be at risk if you go outside in the shaded woods. Don't go outside. Actually, what is the temperature in Canada right now? Temperature Nova Scotia today. Actually, let's see what they're dealing with. Folks, it is going to be in the highs of the 70s in Nova Scotia this week. Don't go outside. It's almost 78 degrees in Nova Scotia with a humidity level of 46%. My God, as an American, and you can live, I live in Minnesota. It got up to 90 with 90% dew point. If you're in Florida or Texas, I used to live in Phoenix where it routinely gets to 110 degrees in the summertime. Are you listening to this and you're like, hold on a second, it's too hot in Canada? And I'm just Googling the temperature there. Highs of 78, and that's on Wednesday. Today it's going to be a high of 74, and tomorrow a high of 75. Yep, it is too hot in Canada, folks. Do not go outside. This is insanity. Insanity. Humidity levels under 50%. Temperature is under 80 degrees, but don't you dare go outside. Don't put yourself at risk. When I lived in Phoenix, by the way, I did this in February, so it didn't get too hot, but we did like the Grand Canyon down and out in a single day here. So it was like 12 hours of just hiking outside in the sunshine. So you hike down the Grand Canyon, you go all the way down to the river at the bottom, and then going down is optional. That's what they like to tell you. Going down is optional, and then going up is mandatory because you can't stay down at the bottom by the river there. So you got to go back up, and back up is absolutely the worst part here. My knees were on fire. We had an asthmatic with us, or I think he was diabetic or something like that, and he was trying to hike up for 6 straight hours going up the Grand Canyon. he was struggling for sure. It was hot. It was mandatory to get out, short of paying for some expensive helicopter service to rescue you. But we did it. We did the Grand Canyon in one day, down and out. It was hot. It was sunny. This guy right here, though, he would probably throw me in prison for trying to do that. Thank God the Grand Canyon is not in Canada. But don't go outside. It's too hot in Canada. And just remember, if you live in the United States, wherever you are in the United States, right now, it is hotter in your backyard than it is in Canada. But in Canada, that is just too hot to go outside. Now, and I'm guessing, I guess I'm going to put on my little crystal ball hat for a second here. In the wintertime, when Nova Scotia gets below zero, as I imagine it does, don't go outside. It's too cold. Do you see how they play this game? They actually don't care what the temperature actually really is. They don't care. Summertime just means hot. Wintertime just means cold. You can't go outside right now because it's too hot. You're not going to be allowed to go outside in the wintertime. I guarantee it. And then in the fall and the spring, don't go outside because it's going to be rainy and slippery. And we don't want you to fall and slip on the wet pavement there. Just don't make stupid decisions. Keep yourself safe. Don't go outside when it's wet, hot, cold. Just never go outside again. That is the message here.
This situation sucks. Summer is one of the best times in Nova Scotia, and we all look forward to getting outdoors and enjoying our scenic beauty that surrounds us. I get that, and I'm right there with you as Nova Scotians. But you can still go to the beach. In fact, that's a great place to be on these hot, dry days. Just no bonfires.
Look, I get this from a standpoint of we don't need any fires. So he keeps stressing this point. Don't be an asshole and then throw your lit butt on the ground. Don't have a bonfire. I don't know about you guys. Do I need to be told twice to not have a bonfire with dry leaves and kindling and all of the wood around me? I guess some people do. People vote Democrat, so people are stupid. So maybe that message needs to be said there. But the idea that the government's going to be the one dictating this, look, put laws on the books. You start a forest fire, you go to prison for life because you're an asshole and you're ruining it for the rest of us here. I have no problem with that whatsoever here. But he's like, you can go to the beach. You can get outside, enjoy the beach. They're trying to limit forest fires. I think that is the underlying premise. But at the same time, that's not how he's selling this to us. He is saying it's too hot. Don't do that. No, I will go outside. I will hike the Grand Canyon in July next time. I don't care how hot it is. I'm going to do it. Is it stupid? Probably. But am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed to go outside? You betcha. Am I going to go for a run in 90-degree weather? I don't want to, but I'm going to because I don't have any other options. I got to train for this triathlon. And he says, I know it sucks. I don't like it either. As he does it, you don't get to say something with a qualified statement and then go, but I don't like it either. It really sucks as Canadians, but I'm in charge and I'm going to do it anyways. It doesn't work like that. This is a climate lockdown. There's no other way around it. And he's using the temperature, the heat of Canada to justify it. That's what makes this a climate lockdown. If he had made this a forest fire lockdown and just said, you're not allowed to smoke in the woods, I can live with that. Don't go smoke in the woods. Have a smoke in the parking lot, have an ashtray available, and then go for your hike. And when you come back, light up again. But he didn't say it that way. They're not framing it up this way. They are simply saying it's too hot. Don't go outside. You can't go in the woods. Now, you can own some land. I got some wooded area in my yard here. If I lived in Canada, he'd say, I'm going to fine you $25,000 because you went walking in the woods. You can go to the lake. You can go to the ocean. You can go swim. Go to the beaches. I don't want to go to the beaches. I want to go for a hike in the woods right now. That is not allowed in Canada.
If there's a short trail to get from point A to point B, like from the parking to the beach or to the lake to fish, that's fine. But that's it. No heading into the woods to spend time there. I know it's inconvenient. I know it's the height of summer vacation and people want to do all the activities that we so much enjoy in our great outdoors. We have a beautiful province. I know everybody wants to enjoy it. But we have to stay out of the woods. It's a small price to pay right now to avoid the kind of devastation that we saw from the wildfires in 2023.
All right. So again, he is doing this under the guise of not having forest fires. Do you know what I know, though? 99.9% of people, it could be 99.99% of people, we could probably add N or nines forever. We're not causing forest fires when we enjoy nature. We don't do that. Now, it only takes one bad apple, but this is a larger problem with Democrat communist philosophy in general. They will always punish the good guys. They will always punish law-abiding citizens. They will always punish the smartest kids. Whatever context you want to put this in. I'll talk about education in just a second as it relates to this. But because of one bad idiot, All of us are now penalized for it. This is the opposite way to run society. What you do is you open up freedoms and you say there are now consequences for being that asshole that starts a forest fire, that has a bonfire in August with a dry forest setting. You punish them, you don't cater to them. So I'll connect this to education as well. If you have kids, you saw kids go through the government school system, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We all went through the government school system. I'm young enough now to remember that it all started in the 80s and 90s when we said, look, Todd, you are proficient, you are excelling. I don't have to worry about you. I'm going to spend all of our time and money and resources, extra teachers, extra time with the lowest and the slowest in the school system because it's not fair to them. They deserve equity in the education system. We're going to give them a second teacher, whether that is a special ed teacher, whether that's an English language learner teacher, whether that's a remediation class that we're going to offer them. We're going to focus all of our time on making sure they can do 2 plus 2 and you ready to do multiplication. Well, good job. You're all ready to move on to the next grade. So you're going to sit here for a whole school year while we remediate the hell out of these brain dead kids that will never figure it out anyways. And this is, look, kids come in all stripes. They're all wonderful. I am raising my kids to be healthy, happy, productive citizens. However intelligent they end up, whatever successes they achieve, that is second to just raising a good moral person. And I love them all the same if they're going to be the next Rhodes Scholar or the next school bus driver or janitor. Like, that means nothing to me whatsoever. Are you a good person? Are you kind to others? Do you stand up for yourself? But are you a good moral person that is not a drag on society, a burden on society? We don't focus, obviously, on character in education. That's a huge problem as well. But no, it is not fair to the smart kids to focus all your time on the dummies. And it's not even fair to the dummies to have all the attention spent on them because you are giving them false hope. If you have an IQ of 70 in the government school system, no amount of remediation, or even in a private setting, if you have an IQ of 70, you are basically limited to what you will accomplish in life. This is just a fact. I cannot practice more with you. I cannot show you more examples. I cannot spend more time one-on-one with you. No more kidney bean stations. No matter what I do, if you have an IQ of 70, you're kind of stuck in a certain path in life, and that's fine. You can still be a great human being with an IQ of 70. There's a lot of really smart assholes that I would rather see go to prison right now. So no, your intelligence really has nothing to do with how good of a person you are. But every aspect of life, we are going to cater. We're going to focus all of our attention on the short bus kids. We're going to focus all of our attention on the one guy that might throw a cigarette in the forest here, and it ruins it for everybody. You can't go for a hike in the woods anymore because one guy might do something bad. And yes, burning down a forest is pretty bad, but then hold them accountable and deal with it and move on here. I don't need preventative measures to crush my freedoms and destroy it for me when I am not going to start a forest fire. I just want to go out and enjoy the woods. These are public lands that my taxpayers pay for, or my tax dollars support, so I have access to them. These could be private lands, so I absolutely have access to them. The one guy that might do something here, this is not how you establish a society. This is not how you make laws and rules on the off chance that one dude might do something. If that were the case, if you want to take that to its logical conclusion, then you would ban pretty much every activity. And this is again why the Dems want to go after your guns, because one bad guy might utilize a gun in an awful situation. And if you ban the gun like we saw in the UK, well, now they're just going to ban machetes and knives as well because they don't have guns, but they have these other weapons they're going to use, and it just goes on and on and on. I can't do it. But this guy comes across as such a weak male figure right here. He is taking the coward's way out. He is, again, catering to the lowest common denominator of society, which never works out. But he's speaking so slowly. He's like doing that thing where I really hate that I'm doing this. Like, I was an assistant principal for a couple years. I had to break a lot of bad news to parents and teachers. This is exactly what you do because it's not sincere at all. You pretend to empathize with them. This guy has zero empathy. If you're a Democrat, if you're a communist, you have zero empathy. It's all fake. But you pretend to feel their pain. I know it really sucks that I have to add 5 more kids to your classroom, teacher. I'm upset about it as you are. I really hate that there's going to be 5 more lunatics in your room that are going to throw chairs and rip things off the wall and punch other classmates, and their parents are going to be a disaster, and I'm going to send them back to your room because we can't suspend kids. I really hate that I have to do all of this here. I'm right there with you. This guy doesn't care. He's not affected by it. I guarantee he's going to go for a walk in the woods, by the way, because that's what these elites do. I'm going to impose rules on you, and then I'm going to fly somewhere else. Well, we're going to probably find him in a Maine forest at some point. I don't even know his name. I don't care to know his name. But this is absolutely what they would do. He would go for a walk in some other woods. It's just like, I'm really sorry. I hate there. I'm right there with you. I hate everything about this. All right, but we got to get to the local news coverage of the story as well. How do you think Canadian local news covers the story of climate change lockdowns coming your way? And again, there's a kernel of truth there. Yes, it's hot, and by hot we mean 78 degrees, but they're framing it up as it's too hot to go outside. He kind of says like it's to prevent forest fires, but then just say that. Like, just be real with us and say, I'm afraid of forest fires. Don't be that guy. But to keep our forests safe, we're going to stop you from going outside for some reason. It's still lunacy, and it still goes back to my idea of you can't run a society catering to the LCDs. But at least it would be more honest. But he's couching it in like it's too hot. Like, no, it's not too hot. It's not even 80 degrees up there. This is not hot. He's like, I got to look out for people because you can get heat stroke when you're in the shaded forest in an 80-degree day, which has never happened in the history of people walking through forests. But here's Canadian news here. Let's see how they talk about the introduction of climate lockdowns.
A leisurely walk in the woods is no longer allowed in Nova Scotia, and it may not be for the rest of the summer.
Effective 4 p.m. today, we're telling Nova Scotians, stay out of the woods.
Nova Scotia's premier announced today a ban on activities in the forest because of extreme dry conditions and the risk of wildfires.
Hiking, camping, fishing, and the use of vehicles in the woods are not permitted. Trail systems through woods are off limits.
At these walking trails in the heart of Sydney, some agreed with the move while others didn't.
As long as you're not starting a fire or smoking, that kind of thing, you should be able to walk there.
Just got to pause. Carolyn speaking too much common sense here. As long as you're not doing something that will start a forest fire, you should be allowed to go. Yes, Carolyn, thank you for saying it perfectly here. How hard is this, folks? Just don't be that person that starts a forest fire and go enjoy the woods.
It kind of sucks for the campers and anybody out tenting, but it's probably necessary.
All right, folks, this is hilarious here. I have not watched this clip in its entirety. I wanted to be right there with you. This guy, absolutely, and I think you could probably put the pieces together. All right, Carolyn's coming out tough here. She's firing some common sense shots like, just don't start a fire and you can go for a walk. You look at this guy. He is overweight. He's got the stupid glasses. They always wear the big glasses. You can see he's got the ear gauge here. Everything about this guy said to me, I bet he supports what's happening here. And then you listen to him talk right away, and he's got kind of like the non-confident, a little bit of higher voice. And I'm the last guy that can talk about higher voices in men here, but he's just very calm about it. Like, everything about this guy put together, I was like, as soon as he started talking, I bet he agrees with his Canadian government locking you out of the woods here. So I'm going to play his part over again. Like, just look at this guy. He just looks like someone that says, yes, government, I want more tyranny. Can you lock me down harder, please?
It sucks for the campers and anybody out tenting, but it's probably necessary.
At these wooded trails in Coxie.
Yeah, it's probably necessary. We just need the government to dictate every action in our lives. Don't take any personal responsibility. Don't try to go get a job and provide for your family. Just get EBT and SNAP. Don't start a forest fire. Just make sure the government prevents you from ever getting in the forest in the first place here.
The entrance is blocked off. The people who run the trails say while they understand the province's move, it's also unfortunate.
So there's some expansions and upgrades that we had hoped to finish this summer that, depending on how long this goes, it will be slowed down.
According to the province, the penalty for violators will be the same as it is for the burn ban put in last week, $25,000, though camping is allowed at
And again, I have to say this repeatedly. If you start a fire, I fully support, and honestly, I would ask for more than just $25,000. I think you should pay whatever damages you incur. If you start a massive forest fire and it burns down multiple homes, burns down park trails, burns down trees, like whatever it costs to replant, whatever it costs to rebuild, you should have to pay for it. You started that fire. You should not be able to start a forest fire, and then the government's like, it's a taxpayer deal. We'll find it in the budget. No, you should pay for it. $25,000 fine is definitely getting off light. I don't even think they do prison time. Like, you should go to prison for starting a forest fire. So you know what? I get it. This is a tough one to thread the needle on here. Government, get out of my way. Also, government, just come down as hard as possible on these people doing it. I think that's a fair position, though. Like, government has a role. There's no such thing as no government in the world. I am fine with an authoritarian government at this point. An authoritarian government, I mean, here are unlimited freedoms except for like 10 things you can't do. You can't do X, Y, and Z that are bad for society, harmful to other people. I would add putting a forest fire on the map in your Nova Scotia province is a bad thing. That's harmful to the forest. It is harmful to your neighbors. It is harmful for air quality. It just ruins quality of life for everybody. You can't do it. You can't start a forest fire. I know that's really controversial here. So that's when I want government to step in and say, you are now removed from society because you can't even be trusted to not start forest fires. So I think that's a perfectly reasonable position in my authoritarian worldview. Authoritarians, all you got to do is say, these 10 things are off limits. Everything else, go nuts. Don't be an idiot. Don't hurt other people. Don't ruin it for the rest of us here. I think that is, an authoritarian comes off wrong sometimes. That seems like the only model of government that is functional.
Registered campsites, and some exceptions will be made for work in the woods.
So they can get a permit to carry out their operations on Crown lands. They may need to operate at night, which can take place.
The Premier says with nothing but more dry weather expected in the coming days, the move is being made now to try and avoid a major wildfire like the one outside of Halifax 2 years ago.
We've had briefings from Environment Canada about the near-term forecast, and there is no significant rain in sight.
As for how long this ban on being in the woods...
All right, we're going to stop it here. Where's my guy? Here, I'm going to leave it at Carolyn. I like Carolyn. She's the only one that has common sense here. Carolyn speaking some truth here. Yeah, just don't be the idiot that does that, and you're good. So there is local coverage. Again, there's no such thing as neutrality. I think it's worth pointing out that there is no such thing as being neutral in the middle. Everyone has a bias. Everyone has a perspective. And the idea of neutrality doesn't exist, certainly in politics here, where it's like, you know what, let's have competing viewpoints, and they'll talk it out in the marketplace ideas. They'll debate it on the House floor, debate it in the public commons, and then they'll arrive at a solution that doesn't give both sides of what they need, but makes the most people happy. Everything about that is stupid, childish, and naive. You need to get it out of your heads, folks, that there is anything such as neutrality in politics, in governance. There is might making right. Whatever party wins sets the tone, sets the rules, and enforces those things. So when you have a Joe Biden in office, or I'll use Minnesota as an example too. Minnesota famously I don't want to drop the R word, but famously confused when it comes to electing people. So for a long time, we would have like a Republican governor and Democrat governor switch seats. You would have like one party control the Senate, one party control the House. So there was always like that tug of war. This is not a healthy thing. This is obviously not working, because when Minnesota Democrats in 2022 took over the House and the Senate by one seat, so you're thinking to yourself, well, it's only one more seat. We always had this nice tug of war. Minnesota Dems didn't listen to what their Republican colleagues wanted. They didn't listen to what half the state's constituents wanted. They said, we are now in complete control with the slimmest majority humanly possible, and we are going to ram every communist agenda wet dream down your throats in Minnesota. Half the state doesn't want it. Half the state despises it, but too bad you're not in power, so we're not going to listen at all to the people on the other side here. Neutrality, get out of here with that. We were a 51% Dem majority, and they might as well have had every single seat. Democrats were in control. Democrats did what they wanted. That's why when it comes to Republicans being in control, Republicans need to do everything possible, redistrict every single state in America right now, get as many House seats as possible, throw illegals off the census here, make sure Republicans pick up 20 more seats, and that is the only way moving forward here. Climate lockdowns, indeed. You cannot be neutral when you're presenting this coverage here. Either this is a good thing or this is a bad thing. Oh, we're going to let the viewers decide on this one. I don't believe it. Everything has an agenda. Everything needs to be an agenda, and everything is political at the end of the day now. So here we got Carolyn, and then you got the other effeminate dude there that was, again, overweight, glasses, ear gauges, speaking softly here like, yeah, this guy probably likes what's happening. It's one or the other. And I don't know if I want my broadcast to let me decide. Like, I already know how I feel about this. I don't need a 2-minute, neutral news clip to be like, well, what do you think about this going on here? And then they're even justifying it. Like, that's the irony here. This is kind of like the NPR style where they think they're presenting an impartial worldview. They still have an agenda. The way that they framed it all up. Well, see, it is hot outside and he doesn't want to do it, but here's what we're going to do because we don't want what happened in Halifax. Like, even the coverage itself, as impartial as it pretended to be, as calm as and reasonable and measured as it pretended to be, it still favored it. Did it ask any hard questions about, is this good for individual freedom? Is this actually a solution? Should we be catering to society's lowest 0.01% of dregs? It didn't ask any of those questions. So no, even in its neutral coverage, it still had an agenda here. It was just softening the blow of communism. See, here you got your Canadian PM up here saying, you're not going to go in the woods. And here's the news coverage to be like, let me try to defend his actions while you're not allowed to go in the woods here. I hate it. Every time I play something, I think I end up by saying just I hate it. But again, this is stupid. Save for Carolyn Ross on this clip here. Again, you got him, you got the PM, you got everything about this. And I'm going to pop this back up one more time. Where we live in Minnesota, coming to a state near you, just south of Canada. Air quality alert. Consider reducing trips. I will not consider reducing my trips. I will drive. I went for a run. I ran 6 miles the other day in the haze. Here come the Canadian wildfire smokes into Minnesota here. And I'm like, F it. This might be bad for my lungs. It might make running a little bit harder here. But no, I'm not going to lock myself down. I'm not going to stop living. And who knows? Maybe I shorten my lifespan by going for that 6-mile run with the smoke going in my lungs. I'll just join Jason in the smoke. I didn't have a cigarette that day, but I did run in Canadian haze. All right, folks, we got a little bit more time left on the docket here. I don't know how much time I'm going to spend on this, but I felt like I had to just cover it a little bit. Let me pull this up here. I just want to make a comment on this story really fast. So yesterday there was a Fort Stewart shooting. 5 service members were shot up by, and wouldn't you know, registered Democrat, Army Sergeant Cornelius Radford. I don't have a lot to say that you folks aren't already aware of. I just want to institute a new law. We talk about authoritarianism. One of my laws is if your name is Cornelius and spelled Quornelius, you might as well just be sent to prison right away. Nobody with the name of Cornelius with a Q will ever be a productive member of society. This is a hard and fast rule. Call it the Todd Peterson law of naming. If you have a name of Cornelius, you will end up in prison. This is 100% certain. And so, no, am I shocked that a registered Democrat named Cornelius shot up soldiers? No, I am not at all. How did this guy pass mental health screenings? How did the Army admit him? When it comes to the Todd Peterson law of naming, you are banned from entering public life, from the public sector. That means you are absolutely not getting into the Army. Here's his application to join the armed forces here. It says your name is Cornelius. Well, thanks for your application here. Can we offer you a prison sentence instead, just for having such a ridiculous name? No, we are not talking about this. No, Democrats aren't shrieking about gun control over this narrative. It turns out when you have a registered black Democrat, that's not really good for your narrative. Also, though, can we please let service members carry on these? You can sign up for the military. You can go get killed in some desert for the elites. You're not, and you can be trusted to carry out these missions overseas, but you can't carry a firearm on a base? This is absolutely ridiculous here. If I trust you to be in the military, access to information, access to skills trainings, access to these missions abroad, I think I can trust you with a firearm on base. Why do we have rent-a-cops, these MPs? They're allowed to carry, but another soldier isn't? Also, how did he get a gun, by the way? A lot of questions here, but yeah, we need to ban that immediately. Guess what? There would be no more base shootings if every service member carried on them. What are the bad guys going to do? But again, I just had to comment on the name here. I was like, I assume it's a black guy that did this or a Muslim that did it, a la Fort Hood. And then I saw the name and I was like, I have to talk about this name for a second. Todd Peterson, rule of naming. If your name is Cornelius with a Q, I think right after birth, you need to go to prison. And I know that's not really in line with my abortion policy of like ban all abortion. All life is innocent here. Cornelius, guys, I know I'm being kind of facetious here, but what the hell is happening with our names? Like I said, I think when the Army looked at his application, they should have been like, no, but we have Fort Leavenworth. Do you want to go to Fort Leavenworth forever? Because I think you're probably just going to shoot up bases here. What an awful story. What a tragic story. How preventable, as always. But look at this guy. How did he even get in the military? Why are we allowing him to get a gun? Why is he allowed in society? I have so many questions with him. All right, and then I wanted to get to this story as well. So in Minnesota, man, Tim Walz was he was so close to being vice president. Can you imagine a different timeline where Kamala Harris is president, only 1.5 points separated her and Trump, and then Tim Walz is vice president right now, inviting millions of these dudes, these Matt Walsh. I listened to Matt Walsh's show yesterday, so I was like, I don't know if I can really top that. I'm not going to go on a Somali rant. He did a great bit on, I think, his most recent episode, though, talking about why are any Somalis in the United States? This is a country. He had some stats to back this up. Somalia is, I think, the leading country in the world when it comes to child sexual abuse. In 2017 is when they finally enacted a law against rape. So this is Somalia. And the story that he was talking about, so some Somali dude saw an unattended white girl, I think it was, in her backyard and beat her on the head, put her in the car and sexually assaulted her, and then followed up with her later on to be like, when can I see you again? And so here is a guy that gets caught. They had to actually entrap him. So the parents pretended that they were the girl, texted him and said, I'd love to see you again, because this guy believed it too. He's like, I'm sure this isn't a setup. So he's texting with the girl saying, I'd love to see you again. And the reply back is says, yes, why don't you come over right now? I'm all alone. And the parents were the one doing it with the police nearby. So this moron comes back, gets arrested, and the Somali community rallied around him. This isn't related to the visual here, but I just had to talk about Somalia for a second. And the Somali community said, he's having a hard time adjusting to a new culture. Can you please take it easy on him? And then it turns out he's been here for 20 years. And then it turns out if your appeal is that it's a different culture, what you are openly saying is that Somali culture condones the sexual assault of minors and condones rape. And it turns out it does, because until 2017, there were no laws in Somalia criminalizing rape. And it turns out if you're saying, I can't adjust your culture of not sexually abusing kids, you are admitting that your culture loves sexually abusing kids. Again, women are for reproduction, boys are for sex. And we want to bring all these people over here. So not only do you have that angle, but then we have this story out of Minnesota. Again, this happened under Tim Walz during the pandemic here. Let's just feed all the kids. Tim Walz said no kid's going to go hungry, even though they're not allowed to go to the government school system. They're going to be staying at home. So they set up programs to make sure kids got fed. And a group of Somali criminals decided that they were going to start feed our families. So they billed the government for $250 million, never fed a single kid. Government didn't look into their operations like, hey, we're paying a lot of money. Let's make sure that this operation exists. Didn't do that. So now they got busted. And this dude right here, his name is Farah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what his name is. But he's going to be in prison for 28 years, apparently, for the flagrant disregard of the law. That's an understatement. And the attorney said this country gave Farah everything. And how did he repay this country? He robbed us blind. Yep, you could say that as well. But I don't want this guy in prison. I don't want taxpayers to be keeping him alive for 28 more years, feeding him, sheltering him, clothing him, getting more access to criminal Somalis in prison. I want this guy deported. This guy should be, how is this not grounds for immediate deportation? I don't care if he was born here. I don't care if he was naturalized here. I don't care if he's a TPS, because for some reason Somalis deserve temporary protected status. Whatever his actual paperwork says, he deserves to be deported. That is it. You are a Somali criminal. You committed this crime. You are obviously guilty of this crime. See you later. You get to go back to Somalia. You are in the United States, the best country in the world. And it's just like Ilhan Omar. I think this is par for the course for Somali culture. Can anyone name a single thing that Somali culture brings? Somali individuals, and they're always good individuals. I worked with some in St. Cloud. I worked with a fantastic woman who actually got naturalized here. But I made the point earlier, you can't make exceptions. I can't make a rule based on the exceptions. I'm not going to make an exception. Oh, well, there's one good Somali that I interacted with, so they can all stay. All hundreds of thousands of these clowns can stay here. They need to all go home. They don't bring a single thing to Minnesota or America that enriches us, makes our lives better, makes our communities stronger, makes everybody safer. They bring absolutely nothing to the table. And like I said, Matt Walsh went on a rant for like 15 minutes yesterday. I'm not going to rehash it. I can't say anything different that he didn't already. But I was just like, my goodness, we're going to send this guy to prison now for 28 years. Fine, justice served. Number one, how is this not like a death penalty situation? Number two, how is this not life in prison? And number three, why aren't we deporting this guy already? Just send him home. All these Somalis need to be sent home. That's the bottom line. Every Somali in Minnesota, I want to see deported. I don't know, folks. Donald Trump's letting me down. When people are like, the polls say that, Americans are disappointed in Donald Trump. It's not because he's doing stuff. It's because he's not doing enough of it. Yeah, Donald Trump deported, 1 million people or million self-deportations. That's good, but I'm disappointed because I want 50 million self-deportations. Oh my God. Ken says if it's a rant about Somalis, rant away. Ken, I could tell you stories from my time working in the St. Cloud government school system. 2 entire elementary schools were 100% Somali. Within 20 years, you went from these sleepy little white communities, not the wealthiest, it was probably lower middle class St. Cloud white families, but good enough families. And then in 20 years, these entire neighborhoods were reshaped by Somalis that didn't ask to come here, didn't want to be here, are not appreciative of being here now, don't really want to be here. They're still paid money to fly home to Somalia for vacations every year, but just taken over completely. And then the white staff, it's all white staff, they're told that they're awful human beings for being white. They need to understand Somali culture. We would hire all these community liaisons in the school. These kids would shit on the bathroom floors. They would start fights every day. And I kid you not, I have seen a lot of different kids here in the school system. I worked in Brooklyn Center, mostly black and Hmong. Worked in North Minneapolis, mostly black and Hmong. I've never worked in like a white school system. Always, well, I was a younger guy too. You don't get hired as an assistant principal when you're 30 years old if you go to like a suburban white school. You go to these places that are just desperate for anybody. But these, I kid you not, Somalis are the best liars on the planet. It is part of, I always forget the word for this too. In Muslim culture, you're allowed to lie. What is that? I always forget this one. I had to Google it really fast here since I'm talking about takia. That's what it was, takia. You would watch these Somali kids punch one another, steal off the teacher's desk, steal from you, run away, and you'd say, why did you do that? And they would look at you with just dead eyes, because it's a culture of dead eyes, and they'd say, I didn't do that. And they believed it. These people actually believed it. Yeah, Ken is saying, that's right, you have a large Somali population there. Bigger and growing by the day. Minneapolis is Mogadishu. St. Cloud, Minnesota is Mogadishu. And you're always like, why are the Somalis in cold, frigid Minnesota? And not only cold, frigid Minnesota, why are they in rural Minnesota? If you don't think Great Replacement Theory is real, then you have to understand, you would have to explain to me, how is it that that Somalia, of all the countries on the map, we just plucked Somalia and we're like, these people are what we need in America. And not only America, rural white Minnesota. You know what? That makes perfect sense. There is nothing to replace white populations more than just random Somalis, criminal, low IQ, inbred Somalis going to Minnesota and going to St. Cloud, Minnesota, where nobody voted for them, nobody wanted them. Nobody still wants them, by the way. St. Cloud is some of the most dangerous roads in the state. This is from law firms. There's auto accidents everywhere because you got burqa'd women driving their free minivans down the road. They have no idea what is happening. If you're in Minnesota on the freeway up in the St. Cloud area, you will see so many beaten up minivans, and you're like, I wonder who's driving that. You know already. And you look over, and it is a woman clad in the entire gear, and she is looking at a green light, and she is parking in the road, in the middle of the road here. She sees a red turn arrow, and she sees oncoming traffic, and she's like, now's my moment. And she will just fly her car into oncoming every single day. It is a disaster to drive up there. I'm surprised they aren't hijacking fishing boats for ransom on the Great Lakes. Ken, you joke about that now. It's going to happen. I think Ken's onto something here. And these guys are going to, I don't know if enough of them speak English, but they will say, I am the captain now on this fishing vessel. Yeah, great salmon fishing, great trout fishing on the Great Lakes. That will likely be ruined as well. Yeah, speaking of fishing, we're going to have to get into like Native American rights, Indian rights, how they're allowed to net on Mille Lacs and get as much walleye as they want. And if you're a white Minnesota resident, you can fish for like 2 months out of the year and keep one walleye. That might have to be a topic for another day, though, the reservation system. But Ken, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your comments here. Yes, if it's about Somalia, I will rant all day long. I have permission to rant all day long. So Ken, permission received, and we will fire ahead with that. I did have one more story, though, I think I wanted to cover. That was it, actually. That was all of it here. All right, folks. We are pushing up in an hour here already. What a wild day. We got climate lockdowns in Canada. We got a guy named Cornelius doing exactly what if you're named Cornelius, I got to go back to this. This is exactly what you're meant to do. If your name is Cornelius, you were meant to shoot up an army base, I think. No more naming your kids ridiculous things, please. Can we just do that? Is that too hard? Cornelius is already bad enough. And then the parents said, you know what's going to make this even worse? QUO for Cornelius. Like I said, you have one of two options. I think prison or a mental asylum, or Pacific Island. I'll add a third option. I'm always fine with dropping these people off on Pacific Islands. All right, though, but feed our family, 28 years. Like I said, this guy belongs on the next flight to Somalia, and then he needs to stay there. I don't even care if he doesn't go to prison. Also, is paying back the stolen money part of this fine as well? Is that included here? Yeah, boy, the comments on this story are just wild. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they have to pay it back either as I'm scrolling through that story a little bit. But I don't even care. I don't even care about prison. I just want him back in Somalia. I will let him be a free man. That's my trade-off here. Go be a free person in Somalia to the extent that you can have any anything in Somalia. I don't even care. I just don't want him here. I don't want this guy in Minnesota or the United States a second longer. I don't want to pay for him to be alive in prison. I just want him gone. I want every Somali gone in the United States here. They offer nothing. They offer absolutely nothing. Just a gross, backwards criminal culture, and they do not enrich my life whatsoever. Are there individual nice Somalis? Sure, but you'll find an exception everywhere. There's always nice somebody, but I'm not going to make a rule based on the exception. With that being said, folks, Jason, thanks for copying and tuning in. Ken, thanks for watching and tuning in as well. We are going to get out of here tomorrow, folks. Freedom from the Press. It's my favorite hour and a half of the week here. Jason Robertson and I are going to be streaming live at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern on our Rumble channel, The American Tribune, on YouTube, on X, on our Facebook properties here. We have so much to talk about, and we will be on Rumble at the end as well. So make sure you're on our Rumble channel, The American Tribune, for that. And with that being said, I appreciate you tuning in today. We covered a lot of ground here. We now know that climate change will be used to destroy your freedoms, and there is no longer any doubt about that whatsoever. But with that, folks, I'm getting out of here. Have a great rest of your Thursday. I'll see you tomorrow on Freedom from the Press at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern.